Hi, I'm Jackie Buckley, a program officer at the National Center for Special Education Research, and I'm joined today by Erin Higgins, who is a program officer at the National Center for Education Research. In this video today, we will provide a basic overview of the funding opportunities at IES. Before we talk about the particular funding opportunities, I want to provide an overview of IES for those of you who may not be as familiar with IES. IES is the independent research arm of the U.S. Department of Education. We are nonpartisan. We provide scientific evidence on which to ground education practice and policy, and share this information in formats that are useful and accessible to educators, parents, policymakers, researchers, and the public. The legislative mission of IES is threefold. To 1, describe the conditions and progress of education in the United States. 2, to identify education practices that improve academic achievement and access to education opportunities. And 3, to evaluate the effectiveness of federal and other education programs. This graphic represents how we think about the infrastructure at IES to support that mission. We intend for our work to form a bridge from research to practice and back again, recognizing the critical linkages and interplay between research and practice. So how do we do this? We provide data that describe how well the United States is educating its students. We conduct surveys and sponsor research projects to understand where education needs improvement and how these improvements might be made. We fund development and rigorous testing of new approaches for improving education outcomes for all students. We conduct large-scale evaluations of federal education programs and policies. We provide resources to increase use of data and research in education decision-making. And we support advancement of statistics and research through specialized training and development of methods and measures. On a more formal level, here is the organizational structure of IES. We are led by a director who receives advice and consultation from the National Board for Education Sciences. The board consists of 15 voting members who are appointed by the president and confirmed by the Senate. Our Standards and Review Office oversees the scientific peer review process for IES grant applications and IES reports. And we also have 4 centers. The National Center for Education Evaluation and Regional Assistance conducts unbiased, large-scale evaluations of education programs supported by federal funds. They provide technical assistance and support the development and use of research and evaluation throughout the United States. The National Center for Education Statistics is the primary federal entity for collecting and analyzing data related to education. And the grant programs that we'll be discussing today are housed within the 2 research centers highlighted here in blue. The National Center for Education Research, referred to as NCER, and the National Center for Special Education Research, or NCSER, NCSER. You'll notice here that the research centers are separate from our Standards and Review Office, meaning that we are not involved in the peer review process. So this allows us, as program officers, to work closely with you on your applications, and we'll discuss more about that later in this video. The research centers have a similar mission, which is to support rigorous research that addresses the nation's most pressing education needs. There are some differences. NCER focuses on the general population of students, and NCSER focuses on students with or at risk for disabilities. NCER supports research on students in pre-kindergarten through adult learners, whereas NCSER supports research on children from birth through grade 12 or older if the student is still receiving services through the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA. The objective of the grant research programs is to improve education outcomes for all students, particularly for those who are at risk for school failure. Our grant programs do this by identifying or developing what works in improving education outcomes for students, and in particular, interventions that can be widely deployed in schools. What doesn't work, so we can encourage innovation and further research, and also to understand what works for whom and under what conditions. In other words, understanding the processes that underlie the effectiveness of education interventions or the variation in their effectiveness. As I mentioned, IES funds research to improve the quality of education for all students. And as such, all research in IES must address student education outcomes, whether you are researching a student-level intervention, a teacher professional development program, or a systems-level policy. All research must examine student outcomes. These education outcomes include school readiness outcomes in areas that prepare young children for school, such as pre-reading skills or social-emotional development, academic outcomes that reflect students' learning and achievement in the core academic content areas, or students' successful progression through the education system. Student education outcomes also include the social and behavioral competencies that support success in school and afterwards. Additional education outcomes include developmental and functional outcomes that improve education results and transitions to employment, independent living, and post-secondary education for students with disabilities.
So before we get into the specifics of each of our grant competitions for this year, we wanted to give you a brief overview of where you can get more information and details about our funding opportunities. The first place you can go is to our website, and specifically to the funding page, which is listed here. I'll give you a few screenshots of the website shortly. All of the funding information that we go over today is available on that page. If you've not done so already, an additional way to get information is to sign up for our news flash. You can do that through our website as well, and I'll show you how to do that on the next few slides. Another place where you can go to find information about funding opportunities is through the Federal Register. The Federal Register notice goes out before our requests for applications, or RFAs, are posted. This notice provides general information about the programs we're going to be competing for an upcoming year, as well as important dates. Please note, though, that in order to really understand the requirements for a competition and to understand how to apply and submit your application on time through grants.gov, you will need to have the request for applications available on our funding page of our website. The Federal Register notice is not sufficient in order to apply. In the next few slides, I'll show you screenshots of the web pages where you can find these requests for applications or RFAs. Finally, another great resource for you is our program officers. So people like Jackie and myself, we work with applicants throughout the entire process up until the application deadline to answer questions about your ideas and to provide you with feedback. As we already mentioned, we have an office within IES called the Standards and Review Office that organizes the review process and recruits reviewers, and that frees us up to work very closely with applicants, as little or as much as you wish, throughout this whole process up through the application deadline. As you hear more information about the competitions today, note those that are interesting to you, download the request for applications for that competition, and contact the program officer for the competition or topic within the competition, if applicable, if you have questions. The contact information for specific program officers is listed within the RFAs, as well as on the topic and competition pages for particular competitions. So here's a screenshot of what our website currently looks like. What you're seeing at the top is the drop-down menu tab, and if you go there, that will give you this blue column on the left. What I want to show you right now is the news and events part of our website. This left drop-down gives you the news and events option, and within that there are a couple of different things you can click on, one being the news flash. If you click on that page, it takes you here where you can put your email in and subscribe to our newsflash. As I mentioned, this is a great way to find out more information about what's happening at IES, not just funding opportunities, but also reports that we put out and other information that's relevant to our stakeholders. You can choose through this form whether you want everything or whether you just want a subset of information from a particular center. If you want only funding opportunities, there's a place to select that. However, I would encourage you to actually allow most things to come into your inbox. We don't send news flashes out all that often, so you wouldn't actually be filling up your inbox every day with lots of information from us. We try to pick and choose the really critical information that we think a broad group of our stakeholders would be interested in. If you go back to the home page and hover over the menu again, another option for you is funding opportunities. This is where you can find the specific information about the competitions we'll talk about today. In particular, the requests for applications that provide you with that information about how to apply and the requirements for particular competitions is available on this page. So if you hover over funding opportunities, you'll see the option to click on the funding opportunities page. And you'll also see a page where all of the recordings regarding our grants are listed. And a third option, which is the Search Funded Research Grants and Contracts link, which we'll talk a little bit more about later. That particular link is a great resource for you as you prepare your ideas and decide whether a particular competition is a good fit. Our funding opportunities page includes information about how to apply for an IES grant. It also gives you the link to grants.gov, which is the website that you need to go to in order to submit your application. That's something important that we'll talk about later as well. Some other things to keep in mind are that we strongly encourage you to submit a letter of intent, and we also encourage you to register or update your organization on grants.gov ahead of the application deadline. Also on this same funding page, you'll see that we list out all of the research programs and research training programs that we are competing for the 2018 fiscal year. This is a page that you should always have bookmarked, and you can continue to come back to it knowing that you'll have the most up-to-date information about our funding options. Now that you're on this funding page, you might be wondering, how do I even apply or find the appropriate grant programs for me? The first thing you should do is read these requests for applications for a particular program. The request for applications provides you with the information you need to know about how to apply, as well as specific requirements, and also recommendations for applicants that are useful when preparing your project narrative. Secondly, you should review these requirements in depth, make sure you meet them with the ideas that you have. And lastly, as I already mentioned briefly when showing you the Funding Opportunities tab on our website, you should look at abstracts of projects we've funded previously under a topic or program that you're interested in. When you do this, keep in mind that the requirements can change from year to year, and it's important for you to keep the 2018 requirements in mind as you craft your ideas. So use these as a general tool to get a sense of whether you fit under a particular competition, but always defer to the current request for applications when crafting your narrative. Now I'm going to turn to talking about what the 2018 funding opportunities are. So we'll start by talking about the primary grant programs within NCER and NICSR. NCER's primary grant program is the Education Research Grants Program, 305A, and NICSR's is the Special Education Research Grants Program, or 324A. For both of these grant programs, you need to apply under one research topic, which identifies the field that you'll be working in, and also one research goal, which identifies the type of work you'll be doing. We use this topic and goal structure to divide the research process into stages and focus areas. Individually, the topics and goals help to focus the work of researchers, and together they're intended to cover the range of research activities that are necessary to address our nation's education problems. On this slide, you'll see the 2018 research topics for NCER and NICSR. There are some similarities among the topics, but also some topics that are specific to each center. More information about these topics is available in the RFAs, including their purpose, requirements, and also considerations and research gaps for each topic. These topics are typically divided by the kind of population that you're focused on, the kind of approach you're using, like education technology as an example, or the content area that you're focused on, whether that's mathematics or reading and writing, for example, among other topics as well. And in addition to the research topics provided in that previous table, NCER offers a set of special topics for 2018, which are the same special topics that were offered for the 2017 competition. These topics intend to provide additional encouragement for research in understudied areas that appear to be promising for improving students' education outcomes and that are of interest to policymakers and practitioners. For 2018, these topics include arts and education, career and technical education, and systemic approaches to educating highly mobile students. And again, you can find more information about these special topics in the RFA for 305A.
So now I'm going to talk about the research goals, or the types of grants that we fund. The Institute uses the goal structure to encourage focused research along a continuum of research, development, and evaluation activities necessary for building a scientific research enterprise. For all applications, as Erin mentioned, in addition to identifying one research topic, you must also identify one research goal. The 5 research goals, which are the same across the 2 research centers, are exploration, development and innovation, efficacy and replication, effectiveness, and measurement. The RFA describes the purpose of each goal as well as the requirements for each goal, which are the minimum necessary for an application to be sent forward for peer review. You should pay close attention to those requirements. In addition, the RFA also provides recommendations for a strong application. We really encourage you to incorporate these recommendations into your project narrative. They are intended to help you improve the quality of your application, and these are also things that peer reviewers pay attention to and look for in high-quality applications. So the first goal is the exploration goal. The purpose of exploration projects is to explore associations between malleable factors and outcomes, and or to identify factors and conditions that may mediate or moderate relations between these malleable factors and outcomes. Malleable factors are things that can be changed by the education system to improve your outcomes of interest. The exploration goal is not designed to support work to develop an intervention or to test the causal impact of an intervention. Exploration projects are intended to build and inform theoretical foundations to support either the development of interventions or the evaluation of interventions, or the development and validation of assessments. For this goal, you can propose a variety of methodological approaches, including secondary data analysis, primary data collection, meta-analyses, or any combination of those above. Our next goal is the development and innovation goal. The development and innovation projects are designed to develop an innovative intervention or improve an existing intervention. These projects will result in a fully developed version of that proposed intervention, data demonstrating its feasibility in authentic education settings, a fidelity of implementation measure, and also importantly, pilot data regarding the intervention's promise for improving outcomes. The emphasis in this goal really is on the development process. We will not accept applications under this goal that propose only minor development activities and are mainly focused on testing the impact of an intervention. So development projects should include an iterative development of the intervention, and they should culminate in a pilot study to show the promise of the intervention to improve student outcomes. And a variety of research designs are acceptable for the pilot study. To ensure that your focus really is on the development, no more than 35% of project funds should be used on your pilot study. Our third goal is our efficacy and replication goal. And this goal supports the evaluation of fully developed education interventions to determine whether they produce a beneficial impact on student education outcomes relative to a counterfactual when they are implemented under ideal or routine conditions by the end user in authentic education settings. This goal supports 4 different types of projects. Efficacy studies to test whether or not a fully developed intervention is efficacious under ideal or routine conditions. Replication studies to generate additional evidence for an efficacious intervention by either directly replicating the intervention or varying the original conditions under which it was tested. Efficacy follow-up studies, which test the longer-term impacts of an intervention that has already been shown to have beneficial impacts from a previous or an ongoing efficacy study. And lastly, retrospective studies, which analyze historical secondary data to test an intervention that was implemented in the past. These projects will result in data regarding the impact of an intervention and also provide information about what is needed to implement that intervention under routine practice. I want to note here too, while not required, the analysis of moderators and mediators can strengthen your application in an efficacy project. Such analyses can make your research more useful to policymakers and practitioners by helping to explain how or under what conditions a program or a policy improves student education outcomes. And also keep in mind that for advocacy projects, it's important to include a plan to ensure the objectivity of the research. which would involve reducing the appearance of conflicts of interest for the developers or the evaluators if they're involved as key personnel. Our next goal, the effectiveness goal, supports the independent evaluation of fully developed education interventions that have prior evidence of efficacy. And the purpose is to determine whether they produce a beneficial impact when they're implemented by the end user under routine conditions in authentic education settings. Routine conditions means the normal day-to-day activities of an authentic education setting, such as a school or a classroom. This goal will also support effectiveness follow-up studies, but not retrospective studies. And these studies differ from the efficacy and replication studies in several ways. First, the intervention must have already been found to have beneficial impacts by at least one prior efficacy study. The intervention must be implemented under routine conditions, and the research team involved in the evaluation must be independent of the intervention implementation. And finally, we have our measurement goal. And the measurement goal supports two types of projects: the development or refinement projects, which seek to develop a new assessment or refine an existing assessment, or validation projects, which validate an existing assessment for specific purposes, contexts, or populations. Measurement projects can address a wide variety of measures, such as academic tests, behavioral measures, observation tools, and school quality indicators. And they can also address a wide variety of purposes, such as measuring student knowledge, evaluating educator job performance, or assessing the effectiveness of schools. And as a reminder, as we mentioned before, all projects must link the assessment to student education outcomes. Another key section in our RFA is a description of changes from prior year competitions. You should read the full RFA carefully. However, there may be changes from the previous year, and we do highlight those changes within the RFA, so you should pay special attention to that section. The specific section for 305 and 324A is shown on the slide here. But each RFA, if it was competed in the past year, will have a similar section about changes from prior competitions. But in general, read the entire RFA carefully. We can't emphasize that enough to make sure that you're getting all the requirements and information that you need to submit your application. So this table shows the duration and award maximums for 305A and 324A. You'll notice that the amounts and duration differ depending on the type of work that you plan to do within a goal. So again, pay close attention to these requirements in the RFA, and also when you submit your application to make sure that this is the correct information in your application. This slide shows important dates and deadlines. Letters of intent are due June 22nd. And as Erin mentioned earlier, letters of intent are encouraged, but they're not required. However, if you submit a letter of intent, you will receive a response from a program officer and will acknowledge receipt of your letter. We'll also give you suggestions about the project and include some links for helpful resources for you as you develop and submit your application. If you miss the deadline to submit a letter of intent and you do intend to apply, then we encourage you to let your program officer know that you intend to apply and send them a synopsis of your proposed project. Application should be submitted electronically via grants.gov no later than 4:30 p.m. Washington, D.C. time on August 17th. And that 4:30 p.m. is a hard deadline. 4:30 p.m., 0 seconds. We suggest that you submit early and make sure to check your submitted application to ensure that all the components are uploaded and accurate. For example, are all your appendices included? Does your overall budget not exceed what we say is allowed? This is particularly important if you personally are not the individual uploading the application. Often your institution-sponsored research office uploads proposals, and we have seen mistakes, accidents in those uploads if you are not the person uploading the grant application. So you should check the application once it's submitted to make sure that everything is accurate. Now I'm going to talk about the research training grant programs. This year, only Nixer is competing their training grant program. NCER is not offering training grants this year. So for this year, NICSR is requesting applications for training under 3 different training topics. The Postdoctoral Research Training in Special Education and Early Intervention program funds programs at doctoral granting institutions to further prepare researchers who have obtained their doctorate to become researchers capable of conducting high-quality, independent special education or early intervention research that advances knowledge within the field and addresses issues important to education leaders and practitioners. The Early Career Development and Mentoring Program provides support for an integrated research and career plan for individual investigators in the early stages of their academic careers who have an interest in special education research. The ultimate aim of this program is to help launch independent research careers for folks interested in infants, toddlers, children, and youth with or at risk for disabilities. The award will provide support for research, including salary for protected time to conduct research, and career development that includes training under the guidance of an experienced mentor or mentors. To be eligible for this grant, when you apply, early career researchers who will be the principal investigators must be within 3 years of receiving their PhD or completing a postdoc. The final training topic is methods training using sequential multiple assignment randomized trial, or SMART designs, for adaptive interventions in education. This program provides support to conduct trainings for education researchers in methodology and data analysis skills related to using SMART designs as part of a rigorous and relevant research on adaptive interventions focused on children with or at risk for disabilities. So just to be clear, you are not applying to receive training in this area, but to conduct this training for other education researchers. Here are the award parameters for the research training grants. And again, you'll notice here that there are different topics within, that the different topics within each of these training grants have different duration maximums and maximum awards. So again, pay close attention to that in the request for applications. And it's similar deadlines, deadlines for the training grant programs, with that deadline of August 17th for the applications. And again, letters of intent. We encourage you to submit a letter of intent by June 22nd.
Next, we'll talk about the National Research and Development Centers program. This program is intended to contribute significantly to the solution of education problems in the United States by engaging in research, development, evaluation, and national leadership and outreach activities aimed at improving the education system and ultimately student achievement. Each of these centers conducts a focused program of education research in its topic area, and in addition, each center conducts supplemental research within its broad topic area and provides national leadership to advanced evidence-based practice and policy. This year, NCER is competing 4 topics within this competition. They are improving education outcomes for disadvantaged students in choice schools, improving rural education, writing in secondary schools, and exploring science teaching in elementary school classrooms. Specific details about requirements for each of these topics is available in the request for applications for the 305C competition. The award parameters for the R&D Center competition differ depending on the topic you apply to. Each of these centers has a maximum duration of 5 years, but the maximum award amount is different depending on the topic. So be sure to look to the request for applications to ensure that you comply with the maximum award amounts. The dates for the center competition are different than that of the other competitions that we've talked about so far. So please note that the application deadline is actually September 21st, 2017, with a 4:30 p.m. and 0-second DC time deadline. The letter of intent is also later for this competition. It's July 13th, 2017. Start dates, however, are still the same as what we talked about for the prior competitions, July 1st, 2018 to September 1st, 2018. The next program I'll talk about is the 305H Partnerships and Collaborations Focused on Problems of Practice and Policy program. Through this program, IES requests applications that intend to support research carried out by research institutions and U.S. state and local education agencies working collaboratively on problems and issues that are a high priority for education agencies. The research can focus on students within a wide range of education settings from pre-kindergarten through post-secondary and adult education. The goal of this research program is the improvement of outcomes for all students, particularly those at risk for failure. This year, we're offering 2 topics. The first is the Researcher-Practitioner Partnerships in Education Research topic, where the goal is to carry out initial research on the education issue of high priority for that particular education agency that has important implications for student outcomes. The end result of the project should be a partnership being well established, a description of the education issue addressed, findings from any initial research, and a plan to carry out future research of interest to both parties through continued collaboration. The goal of this grant is truly about partnership building. The second topic is the evaluation of state and local education programs and policies topic. The goal here is to evaluate fully developed programs and policies implemented by education agencies to determine if they produce a beneficial impact on student outcomes. Again, the key to both of these topics is that these research activities are carried out in a joint partnership between the research institutions and a state or local education agency. On this slide, you'll see the award parameters for the partnerships programs. Again, note that the different topics have different maximum durations and award amounts, so be prepared to pay attention to those in the request for applications. Here are the dates for the partnerships competitions. The application due date is August 17th at 4:30 and 00 seconds DC time, with a letter of intent due date of June 22nd and start dates of July 1st through September 1st, 2018. The next competition I'll talk about is the low-cost, short-duration evaluation program. In 2018, both NCER and NICSR will compete this program. These grants are designed to support rigorous evaluations of education interventions that a state or local agency expects to produce improved education outcomes for students within a short period of time. NCER's low-cost program 305L will support evaluations of interventions for students in pre-kindergarten through post-secondary and adult learners, whereas NICSR's program 324L will focus on infants, toddlers, children, and youth with or at risk for disability. These projects will be carried out by a partnership between a research institution and a state or local education agency. For NICSR, that agency partner can also be a non-education agency that manages early intervention services. The low-cost, short-duration evaluations must rely on administrative data or other sources of secondary data to analyze the impact of the intervention. Evaluations should use randomized controlled trials, or RCTs, or a regression discontinuity design to determine the impact of these interventions on student education outcomes. For NICSR's low-cost program, you may also use single-case experimental designs to analyze impact. Here are the award parameters for low-cost, short-duration evaluation grants. These grants have to be conducted within a 2-year period of time for no more than $250,000. The funds must be used solely for evaluation. The funds can't be used to support implementation of the intervention. These costs are expected to be covered by the state or local agency partner. Here are the important dates for the low-cost, short-duration evaluations competition. Note that there are 2 deadlines for this competition, one on August 3rd at 4:30 p.m. and 0 seconds DC time, and one on March 1st, 2018, 4:30 p.m. and 0 seconds DC time. The window for start dates for these grants depends on the deadline that you choose. Our hope is that by offering multiple deadlines and a shorter window between application deadline and start date, it will be easier to quickly study new initiatives and policies as they are rolled out at the state and local education agencies.
The the final RFA that we'll discuss today is a NICSR RFA on research networks. The research networks focused on critical problems of education policy and practice in special education. And the intention really in a network is to focus resources and attention on high priority issues in special education and create both a structure and a process for researchers who are working on these issues that allow them to share ideas, build new knowledge, and work with each other to strengthen their research and dissemination capacity. The topic for the network this year is Multi-Tiered Systems of Support, or MTSS, at the elementary school level. For this network, the research must be related to the integration of academic and behavioral tiered support systems into a single coherent MTSS framework, and then the high-quality implementation of this integrated framework. There are two roles within the network: research teams and a network lead. The research teams carry out their own research projects and participate in those collaborative activities that I mentioned with other teams in the network. A network lead will coordinate the network's collaborative activities and will conduct research that will complement the research team studies. The MTSS network will support up to 4 research teams. Each team will conduct research at a minimum on the key components of MTSS and the outcomes for students with or at risk for disability in that MTSS system. The Institute is open to research on students with a range of disability type and severity within the MTSS system. We also encourage applicants to consider research issues that are listed in the RFA that have been identified by the literature as key areas of challenge related to MTSS. For example, what are the supports and barriers to implementation and sustainability of tiered support systems? Or what are those critical school leadership skills needed to support MTSS? These and other key areas are identified and described in the RFA. The MTSS network will also support one network lead responsible for that network administration and coordination. To become part of the network, applicants must apply as, or may apply as a research team, a network lead, or both. If applying for both roles, however, you must submit separate proposals, one for each role. So here are the award parameters for the network of 5 years, and you see the differing award amount depending on the role, whether you're a research team or a network lead. And then the dates for the network follow the same dates for NCER centered competition that Aaron had mentioned. So it has a bit of a later due date than some of the other competitions. Those applications are due September 21st, again, 4:30 p.m., 0 seconds. And the letters of intent are due July 13th. So definitely, if you're thinking about a network application, I encourage you to submit a letter of intent and talk to the program officer about the network. The network request for applications is a new RFA for NICSR this year. We are going to spend the rest of the time in this video going over a little bit more about the application submission process. And I'm going to be very high level about it, and then we'll talk about what happens after your application is submitted in terms of what the peer review process looks like, how you get notified about what happens with your application. I want to note, though, that we have an on-demand video available on the IES application process, which will go in depth into how you can submit your application. All of those on-demand videos will be posted on the IES website, so you can access the application process video there. So where do you find the application package? To find the application package, you need to go to the grants.gov website. It is not available on our IES website. The grants.gov website looks like this. In the back of the request for applications for the program that you're applying to, there is a lot of detailed information about how to find the package on grants.gov, how to fill out the application package, the kinds of information that go into each section. Again, we're not going to go over that today. If you have questions about it, please view that IES application process video. Also note that program officers typically are not going to be your best first resource when it comes to issues with grants.gov. So I encourage you, if you run into any technical problems, to first talk to the grants.gov help desk. Contact information for grants.gov is on their website under support. So in addition to the application package, as we've been saying over and over, you really need to have that request for applications downloaded and you need to read it thoroughly. reading everything that's relevant for the particular topic or type of grant that you want to submit. Make sure that you've read through all the relevant sections of that request for application. And like I just mentioned, the RFA does provide information at the end of the document about how to submit your application through grants.gov. Once you've successfully submitted your application by 4:30 p.m. and 0 seconds, we do not accept late applications, on the application due date, your application will then be put into our queue and it will go through the peer review process. The first thing that happens is that your application is reviewed for compliance and responsiveness to the RFA. Compliance refers to whether you included all required content and required appendices. Responsiveness refers to whether you are attentive to the requirements for that specific topic that you chose within a particular competition. And again, in the case of our 305A and 324A competitions, that you've been responsive to the requirements for the particular goal that you select for your application. It's really critical that you meet those minimum requirements so that your application is deemed to be both responsive and compliant. Once applications are screened, they are assigned to a review panel. 2 or 3 panel members are named primary reviewers for a particular application, and they have the content and methodological expertise necessary to review your application and write a thorough review. Once they complete that review, the most competitive applications are then forwarded for full panel review. They are reviewed by the full panel and discussed. Scientific merit scores are given to those applications discussed by the full panel. And from there, we make funding decisions, and we'll contact all of the applicants. The primary reviewers will write reviews that you can then have access to and use. So if you did not receive funding, you can potentially resubmit your application, and you'll use those reviews to help you make some key changes. IES uses an applicant notification system, or an ANS system, which allows applicants to access information about their reviews, or about their review. You will receive email notifications from our ANS system on the status of the award, and you can also download your reviews. If you are not granted the award the first time you submit, please reach out to program officers for the topic to which you're applying. He or she is happy to talk with you about your reviews, and we can help you think through strategies for addressing those comments from your reviews and think through a resubmission.
As you put together your application, here are some other things to keep in mind. We have a great set of resources on our website. Our Resources for Researchers page is where you can find not only the links to the on-demand recordings, but also methodological resources. It includes resources for new tools and data sets that are available that you could incorporate into your research. And the website also has information, more than we went over here, on the peer review process, as well as the tools to look at what IES has funded in the past, which is really helpful for coming to thinking about what kind of work makes sense under a particular topic or goal within a competition. As I've already mentioned, there are many other videos you could consider listening to. The application process overview is one, which Jackie mentioned, but we also have other recordings specific to particular competitions. For example, the networks competition will have a video that will be posted soon that will go into depth on that particular competition. Visit our website to see if there are other videos that would be of interest to you. Here's a screenshot of the Resources for Researchers page so that you can see all of the great information that you can find on it. And this is just a subset of the things that are available on our website that could help you develop a strong application. And finally, here are a few reminders to leave you with. As we've already noted many times, read the request for applications for the competition you're interested in applying to. We cannot emphasize that enough. If you have questions after you read it, reach out and ask us. Look at the abstracts of funded projects, as we've already mentioned as well, to get a sense of the kinds of things that tend to come in under a particular competition that we're offering. And of course, listen to the IES On Demand recordings or videos and submit questions if you have them after you view the video. We're happy to answer those questions either individually or through a frequently asked questions document that we'll post after this video is over. And finally, discuss your research idea with a program officer. Email a synopsis to the program officer and schedule a time for a phone call. You could also email short questions. If time allows, program officers are willing to review application materials and give you feedback in those ways too. Please call or email us early in the process, read the request for applications, and we'll try to help you if we can. Please don't be afraid to contact us. And finally, we'll leave you with our email and a link to the funding page. If you have specific questions about your application, the first place you should go is the program officer listed for that topic or competition. It's also possible that one of the other on-demand recordings we have posted will contain the answer to your question. Thanks for tuning in.